Our 3.1 rational exponents. Now this is mainly review, but we're just going to go over some things and kind of recap. So students will be able to use the properties of rational exponents to simplify and evaluate expressions with rational exponents. So just real quickly, let's talk about something. We could say 2 squared, that's 4. 2 cubed is 8. 2 to the 4th is 16. And 2 to the 5th is 32. Well, I bring that up because I want to be able to do the opposite. That would mean, since 2 squared is 4, that means 2 is the square root of 4. And therefore 2 is the cube root of 8. And we could write the square root of 4. We could write it as the cube root of 8. We could say 2 is the 4th root of 16 because 2 to the 4th equals 16. And so we could write that as the 4th root, 16. And 2 is the 5th root of 32 then. So that would be the 5th root of 32 is equal to 2. So when we say the root, we're just saying kind of the opposite of an exponent. It's going backwards. So you know, if 2 to the 5th equals 32, then that means 2 is the 5th root of 32. So I want to just play with these. We're going to find all the real roots. So what is the 3rd root of 8? Well, this is one that we just did, right? The 3rd root of 8 is essentially saying what times itself 3 times equals 8. Well, we know that 2 cubed is the same thing as 8. So if I put 2 cubed in there in place of 8, and I'm asking for the cubed root, well, these two things are opposite of each other, and it would just equal 2. You can kind of say the cube root and the cube cancel each other out, so the answer is just 2. Okay, let's do the next one. This one says, find the cubic root of negative 1,000. Negative 1,000. Well, first, let's just write it mathematically. The cubic root means the 3rd root, and negative 1,000. So now we're saying what times itself 3 times equals negative 1,000. So these are helpful to use a calculator for because sometimes we can't just see it right away. But basically what we're saying is we want something to the 3rd root to equal negative 1,000. So I'm going to put something to the power of 3 to get me to negative 1,000. Well, I know that 10 times 10 is 100, and 10 times 10 times 10 is 1,000, so maybe it's negative 10. We could check it. We could say negative 10 cubed in the calculator and see that that's negative 1,000. And we could also actually put in the cube root of 1,000, and we would get negative 10. So I'm just replacing this negative 1,000 with negative 10 cubed and canceling it out. Now, if I just went straight to the calculator, just plugged this whole thing in the calculator, I should have just got negative 10 as my answer. And that is. I'm just showing you why, okay? Because the cube root is the opposite of cubing, and so I could rewrite negative 1,000 as negative 10 cubed. Okay, let's play with it a little bit more. This one is saying 1 over 27, take the cube root of 1 over 27. Well, some things I want you to know. When we're talking about cube roots or square roots or anything, we can always separate it. So I can write this as the cube root of 1 over the cube root of 27. Well, the cube root of 1 is just 1, because 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. And what to the power of 3 gives me 27? Well, 27 is the same thing as 3 cubed. So again, the cube root and the cube cancel each other out, and our answer is simply 1/3. Okay, let's play with it a little bit more. This one's a little bit tricky. It's asking for the square root of negative 0.001. First, let's talk about this negative 0.001. That's really just a fraction, so we can write it like a fraction. That's really just saying negative 1 out of 100. If you were to put negative 1 divided by 100 in the calculator, you'd get negative 0.01. Okay? So, but we want the square root of that. Well, this one's going to be a problem for us because we've learned that you can't take the negative of a square root. Up here, we did the negative of a cube root. And that's okay because it's odd, because negative 10 times negative 10 times negative 10 still equals negative 1,000. And so that works. But here, there's nothing that we could do to take the square root of this negative number, because there's nothing that you can multiply by itself to get a negative value. So what we can do is we can separate this. I can separate this as the square root of negative 1 over square root of 100. And when there's a 2, I like to call this little part the crack. So when there's a 2 in the crack, we don't need to write it. If there's any other number, like a 3 or a 4, we do have to write it every time. But when it's a 2, we don't. Okay, well now this is suddenly a little bit easier to deal with, because we've actually done this before. We did this in class. The square root of a negative 1, we said that's the same thing as just I. And the square root of 100, that's easy. That's just 10, because 10 times 10 equals 100. And so that would be that one simplified. Okay, that was just some review. Now I want to get into some rules for exponents. Also, this should all be review as well, but just gets a little bit more interesting as we go on. So we're going to recall some rules for exponents. The first is that you can rewrite a rational exponent. Rational is just another word for fraction. So if you want to write a fraction exponent up here to help you think about what that means, you can write it as a root and vice versa. Here's how you do that. If you have something to an exponent, that is a fraction or a ratio, you can rewrite that with the denominator in the crack. The number on the bottom goes in the crack. The number on the top is your exponent. And the exponent can go on the outside or on the inside. It doesn't matter. Either way, it's going to be fine. So let's just apply that here. Okay, I'm going to leave that up in the top corner so we can see it. So if I wanted to do this, I would put the 32 underneath the root symbol. The number on the bottom here is 5. And then I could put 32 to the 1, but whenever anything's to the first power, I don't have to write it. So really, this is just the 5th root of 32. And then it says we want to evaluate. We rewrote it as a root. Now we're going to evaluate. Well, what is the 5th root of 32? Again, this is something we could use our calculator to evaluate. Your calculator does have the ability to do this. But what we're really saying is, we're kind of saying like, imagine we're saying x to the 5th power. So something to the 5th power equals 32. What is that thing? What is x to the 5th power? And what I like to do is, I like to just try numbers. Try some small numbers. And we actually played with this one already, if you take a look. Up here at the top, we said 2 to the 5th power equals 32. Therefore, the 5th root of 32 is 2. So let's go back down here. Yeah, this must be 2, because 2 to the 5th power is 32. Therefore, the 5th root of 32 is 2. That's a little equal sign. Okay, so this is just, I like to just play with these and try and figure it out which one it is. I mean, you could put in a 3 to the 5th, and see if that's 32. It won't be. It'd be too big, so you know you're going to have a smaller number. And just keep trying smaller numbers. It could be decimals, but most of the time we're not going to give you ones that are that crazy. Okay, let's try this one now. It says 1/25 to the 2/3. Well, let's rewrite it first. Again, I'll put this little formula up here. Remember, the number on the top is your exponent. The number on the bottom goes in the crack. So the number on the bottom is 3. So we would write 125 squared. And we could do this either way. We could square this first, or we could take the cube root first. Because remember, I said I could also write it like this. And I could put the square on the outside, and that's the same thing. For this one, I'd recommend doing it this way, because this is going to get really big and then get small, and I'd rather it get smaller and then just get a little bit bigger first. It'll be just be easier to deal with that way. So what is the 3rd root of 125? So remember, what is that saying? It's like saying, hey, what to the 3rd power equals 125? Well, you could try some numbers here. 2 cubed, if you put that in your calculator, you get 8. 3 cubed, if you put that in your calculator, you would get 27. 4 cubed, put that in your calculator, you would get 64. And finally, if you put 5 cubed in your calculator, you're going to get 125. So we know that the cube root of this part on the inside is just 5. So I can write 5, and then I still have a 5 squared. And 5 squared then is 25. And so that's how we would evaluate that one. All right, let's play with another one. 81 to the 1/4. Okay. I want you guys to try this one on your own and just see if you can rewrite it and evaluate it, and then I will come back and put the answer up here. Okay, so I put the 4 up in the crack, 81. I don't need to put the exponent of 1 because it's the same thing. So I'm really just asking what to the 4th power equals 81. If you tried a few numbers here, 2 to the 4th or 3 to the 4th, you'd quickly see 3 to the 4th equals 81. So therefore the 4th root of 81 is 3. And again, your calculator can do this for you. I could show you guys how that works in class. Okay, let's go on to the next page. All right, the last thing that I want to just review about is what do we do with negative exponents? And the reminder here is that when you get a negative exponent, that just means that you're dividing by that base. So you just put it on the bottom. That's all it is. So if you look here, I have x to the negative n. That just means 1 over x to the positive n. It just means you put it on the bottom. So let's rewrite these. 1 over x to the 4th would be, wouldn't that just be x to the negative 4th? Right, that's just a different way of writing that one. Okay, here it says b to the negative 7th. So when it's already on the bottom and they give you a negative exponent, now you just move it back up to the top. That's literally all you have to do. So this would be b to the positive 7th. So I think we got this figured out. Why don't you guys try the last one there real quick? See how you would write that one. It's very similar to the first one, and then come back and check and see if you did it right. Okay, so we have the 8 on the bottom. That means that this just must be r to the negative 8. Okay, that's all for this video. I'll see you guys on the next one.